Hi guys, was Jacob Rees-Mogg trying to start a witch hunt against the civil service here? He described it as an unelected blob which needs to just grin and bear it and grow a backbone when it comes to both bullying and intimidation. Mogg also demonstrated a lack of understanding of how government operates, which is interesting considering he used to be the leader of the House. A pathetic attempt to defend a pathetic man. Have a listen to this.
I think his resignation was unnecessary, and I think the Prime Minister should not have accepted it. I think it's very dangerous that we are setting the bar so low for this, that being in office requires people with backbone and people who have to work under high pressure, and that is the part of the job. Decisions need to be made quickly and efficiently, but crucially, the civil service has to carry out the policy of the government of the day.
But they can also be treated with respect,
and if it doesn't.
It's not just about respect, but think about it for a moment. Somebody like Dominic Raab, or Priti Patel, or Boris Johnson for that matter. These are people who don't understand how government operates. Like Dominic Raab didn't understand the value of trade, the value of Dover when it came to trade. Dominic Raab, when he was the Brexit secretary, hadn't read the Good Friday Agreement. Didn't understand what was at stake in Northern Ireland. So you can imagine a situation where Dominic Raab says, we need to do X. He meets the civil service. They say, actually, X is unlawful or X can't be implemented. It's not practical. And as an ideologue, his response would be, well, try it anyway and keep trying and do it because I tell you to do it. He's not the type of person like Boris Johnson or Priti Patel who would take it on board and say, okay, well, maybe we can't do this. Maybe we should try something else. No, they're ideologues. Brexiteers are ideologues. They don't care about whether it's practical or not. They just wanted to force these things through. And if you have a civil servant who has a lot of experience and a higher level of knowledge than you have, but you're in a particular power dynamic where you are in control, even though these people are below you and they actually understand reality, and you have an ideology behind you that says you're always right, of course you're going to have conflict.
I mean, let me quote this again. Intimidating, humiliating behaviour, unreasonably and persistently aggressive. I mean, you wouldn't like to be treated like that by your boss, would you?
He can't answer that question, because if he said, no, I wouldn't, then he's in a bit of bother, because then he's saying, well, you know, it wasn't right to treat the staff in the civil service like that. But then if he says, yes, it is, I would like to be treated like that, then it opens another can of worms.
I think that you're taking some very selective points, that actually, over most of the issues, Dominic was found to have behaved perfectly properly. There is an occasion, which, as I understand it, relates to Gibraltar, where he got irritated that the civil service was failing to do its job.
This is the same Dominic Raab that didn't understand the value of Dover. The same Dominic Raab who hadn't read the Good Friday Agreement and was Brexit secretary. And you're saying, well, he was legitimately upset that the civil service weren't doing their job when it came to Gibraltar.
Now, it seems to me there is one way accountability, that ministers are accountable, that the civil servants can be as incompetent, as useless, and can fail to deliver on government policy, and there's no consequence for them.
They can be fired. They can be fired. If they're not doing their job, they can be laid off, or they can be moved to another department. What happens if a minister isn't doing their job, as we've seen on numerous occasions? What happens to them? Are they fired? Who fires them? The Prime Minister fires them. Now, when Dominic Raab was in charge of his department, the last department, Boris Johnson was in charge. And is Boris Johnson the type of person to fire people who are incompetent? Of course not. Dominic Raab wasn't fired by Rishi Sunak. He resigned himself. Like, if he actually believed that he had done nothing wrong and he was completely in the right, then why did he resign?
It is undemocratic. We must surely be run by ministers appointed by the Prime Minister, who has a democratic mandate behind him.
No, the Prime Minister does not have a democratic mandate. You know, you would think Jacob Rees-Mogg would know this. Obviously he does, but he's pretending not to. The Prime Minister is not elected. The Prime Minister as an MP is elected, but the Prime Minister is not elected as the Prime Minister. Because you vote for your local MP, and that MP is appointed by the party as the Prime Minister. He's trying to, maybe I'm splitting hairs here, but the Prime Minister is not elected. Technically, the Prime Minister doesn't have to be elected.
Not by unelected bureaucrats, which is what this is leading to.
Again,
what do you mean unelected bureaucrats? You want the civil service to be elected? Is that what you're calling for? This is just scaremongering. This is a witch hunt that he's going after the civil service because they said we can't do these things. And Dominic Raab, who doesn't understand his arse from his elbow, was trying to push things through anyway. And he was meeting resistance. And his response was not to take these things on board, but to fight back.
What Adam Tolley said in one line was he was aware of his behaviour, or he should have been aware of his behaviour. So the defence that he was doing this unintentionally, again, doesn't hold water when it comes to Adam Tolley's conclusion.
I wasn't making the unintentional defence. I don't want to make the unintentional defence. I think you are allowed in a business relationship to...
But it's not a business. Once again, does Jacob Rees-Mogg not understand how government operates? It's not a business. Government is not a business. I know they'd like to privatise as much as possible and turn it into a business, but it's not a business. For example, if a manager breaks the law, a manager can go to prison. If a manager doesn't respect the rules, they can be removed by the company. Now, Dominic Raab hasn't been fired. He resigned. As I said before, these people are not accountable to the civil service. They're accountable to the Prime Minister. And if the Prime Minister doesn't give a crap, if the Prime Minister is corrupt, then they're not going to fire these people. It's very different to a business. It's completely different. You can't compare government to a business because ministers are appointed. They haven't worked their way up through the system. And there's no meritocracy here. We're talking about Dominic Raab. We're talking about Nadine Dorris. We're talking about Jacob Rees-Mogg. We're talking about people who have no competence.
You'd be irritated when people fail to do their job properly. And if you are a senior civil servant, well-paid senior civil servant, probably on course to get an honour, you should have the backbone to cope with being criticised if your work isn't good enough.
So what he's saying is he's justifying bullying. Oh, if you earn a lot of money, then you deserve to be bullied. What's the threshold there, Jacob? Is it 50,000? If you earn more than 50,000, then you deserve to be bullied. If you earn less than 50,000, then you don't. Or is it 30,000? Is it 25,000? Is it 28,000? I'd love to know where the cutoff point is. Who is allowed to be bullied and who isn't?
So if he hadn't resigned, do you think the Prime Minister would have had to sack him?
No, I don't think he would have done at all. I don't think this report shows a high enough level of bad behaviour to have required a resignation.
Of course you'd say that, because he's a Tory. Can you imagine for a moment if it had been a Labour government? What do you think Jacob Rees-Mogg would be saying now? He should have been fired. He should have been gone a long time ago. Of course, this is the tribal politics we have here. Defend our side. Doesn't matter if they bully. It doesn't matter if they intimidate. We will defend them at all costs. If Keir Starmer were to drink... They were calling for Keir Starmer to resign over having a curry. When he wasn't breaking the law. He wasn't breaking the rules. You know, they were calling for him to resign. And then here we have somebody who has clearly broken the rules, intimidated members of staff, bullied them, and you're still defending him.
And indeed, I think it's a mistake to have allowed him to resign from the Prime Minister because the Prime Minister must have control of who is appointed to ministerial office.
but he does have control. Dominic Raab resigned. He wasn't kicked out by the civil service. Once again, does Jacob Rees-Mogg understand reality here? He's trying to paint a picture that, he was run out of town. No, allegations were made. There was an inquiry. Many of those allegations were upheld. And then Dominic Raab resigned. What part of this are you missing here? Where did the civil service fire Dominic Raab?
And not allow that to appear to be delegated to officialdom. Otherwise, we'll only have ministers who don't wish to do anything and wish to go along.
Ministers who don't want to do anything. What has Dominic Raab been doing over the last number of years? What has he achieved?
With the consensus of the blob.
So does this show a lack of judgment from the Prime Minister?
Well, the Prime Minister has gone along with Dominic Raab's desire to resign, and that's fair enough from his point of view, but I think for government more generally it's a mistake.
Of course you'd say that, because it's a mistake for a Tory government. It wouldn't be a mistake in a Labour government. He would be demanding that these people be sacked. He'd be probably demanding, if Dominic Raab had been a Labour minister, he'd be saying that he should be removed from the House of Commons. Because it's tribalism. It's our side can do no wrong. We will defend them to the nth degree to make sure that they stay in office. What's worrying about all of this is that the Tories are trying to justify bullying. And they'll continue to justify bullying as long as they remain in office. And what the best solution to that is to get them out of office. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.